So a little while ago, Logitech launched their new StreamCam, their new camera that is seemingly targeted for streamers. In fact, it says the ultimate experience for streamers. And they were afraid to send me one. In fact, their entire marketing situation was kind of whack, which we'll talk about, I guess, towards the end of the video to keep it more clean, but it's kind of weird for me not to get one given that I've reviewed webcams for them since 2014 and, as far as I knew, had a working relationship with them. We're going to give it a fair shot. We've got 4 cameras set up here. This is a ridiculous setup. This is how I've been doing webcam reviews since 2014. I've reviewed basically every webcam on the market. I've got a little bit of catching up to do, but we're getting caught up and we're doing it super serious. So up in the top left, we have the Logitech StreamCam, the new one, running at 1080p 60 in MJPEG mode, since that's the only way it's supported, and this is the max spec that, you know, they're trying to market the camera with. Top right, we have an unnamed webcam that I'll be talking about soon, once I'm sure I have approval to do so. It's not even available on the market yet, but it's actually a 4K webcam. But it does run at 1080p 60 in UYVY mode, which is more or less YUY2, which is a better color space than MJPEG. Bottom left, we have the Logitech BRIO running at 1080p 60 MJPEG, just like the StreamCam. I'm an orange boy in that. And then bottom right, we have my Sony a7S II running at 4K 30, coming in through a Blackmagic Quad HDMI video capture card. So we've got 4 different setups here, for the most part running at 60 FPS again, other than the Sony camera, which is at 4K 30, because that's how I operate it. And you will notice, even with all 4 of these, we do have a smooth frame rate. I will say Logitech has improved. As long as you have stable enough bandwidth and enough light, you can get a fairly smooth frame rate here. I'll do my usual frame rate tests here. I know this looks really dumb, but it helps show you like the smoothness of my hand, because in previous tests, if you were USB bottlenecked or the drivers weren't doing so hot, you'd get all sorts of stuttering. So we're doing pretty well. In terms of specs, the Logitech StreamCam specifically seems to be just a variant on the BRIO. It supports up to 1080p 60 in MJPEG mode, or up to 1080p 30 in YUI2 or NV12 modes. YUI2 and NV12 being more uncompressed, lower latency, easier for most computers to decode and add into a scene in OBS, but doesn't always support the higher quality modes. Now it's totally possible to get up to 1080p 60 and 4K 30 over YUI2 on a USB 3 connection, especially with Type-C, because that's what capture cards have been doing for a while. However, I'm guessing that the webcams don't have the processing power for it. Logitech's marketing has this all over the place as being for streamers, but then all of their, you know, trailer for it shows it being put into portrait mode to be used for makeup streaming and things like that. And we're going to talk about their use of Logitech Capture, which is their video recording app that I've recorded or covered in the past. And they have it all over the place. And then they didn't actually seed any review units to people who would actually review it for the purpose of streaming. They seeded it to like 2 really small channels, and otherwise just wanted everyone to get their hands on it instead of giving it to people who would test it for streaming, which to me immediately red flags, as they're not confident in the product. They even had a completely fake image of the webcam that was completely misleading on their product page. Shout out to Harris Heller for catching that and reporting it to them before I even got my unit. Yeah, that's the thing. So they didn't send out review units to most people, so I ordered mine day one once I got confirmation that they're not going to send me one, which is the first webcam of their entire product stack that they refused to send me. A little weird. Ordered mine from the website the day it was ordered. It took them 8 days to even ship it to me, nevertheless get here, and so it took me a while to get this review going. Otherwise, it has a 5-foot USB 3.1 type or Gen 1 Type-C cable. It is not detachable like the BRIO. This makes no sense to me. This is literally a regression. The cable is not detachable. It is limiting people to only Type-C unless they get their own Type-C to Type-A adapter, which they don't include in the box. Overall, I think the Type-C being utilized is fine, but it needs to be detachable because the cable isn't even long enough. I can barely fit it on top of my monitor here down to my desktop, and it just makes no sense not to be detachable. They couldn't have saved them that much money. The BRIO was detachable. It's an immediate regression. Otherwise, it honestly seems like it's the BRIO, but with the 4K specs chopped off, just because that was a higher powered mode. Maybe saves them a little bit of processing power. It does have a couple extra features for these streamers that they're targeting, which I'm going to talk about because it doesn't make any sense, in that you can rotate the camera into vertical orientation, and in Logitech Capture, or if you have it as a video device set into device default mode in OBS, which I covered in my OBS 25 update, it will automatically rotate into portrait mode for you. And they're all like, yay, we support portrait streaming and blah, blah, blah. Please find me the mobile apps that will let you stream in portrait mode from desktop. There's not very many, if any at all. Maybe you would count Facebook. I don't know. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me for this particular market. All of the vertical orientation streaming is done via smartphone, and that is all that supports it. And they even have their Logi logo on this thing on the side, so it's sideways because they want you to run it in portrait. I don't know. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And then they include a separate adapter in the box to convert it to a 1/4-20 tripod thread mount instead of just incorporating it on the camera or the adapter like all of their other webcams have. That being said, the glass in front of the camera does seem to be improved. They're bragging about their f2.0 and 3.7 millimeter focal length, and then it has a field of view of 78 degrees. So theoretically, you get more light in the camera, and it does appear to have a little bit more dynamic range, but at the same time not. Like you can see here, the top left and bottom left are both the StreamCam up top, the BRIO on the bottom, and you can see some of the highlights are rolled off a little bit more smoothly in the StreamCam than the BRIO, and I appreciate that a lot. Obviously, the BRIO's color is all over the place, and that's been one of the complaints about it from day one. But you do see a little bit more into my room, and I know it's a disaster. We just got done with a baby shower and are trying to figure out where everything goes. You do see more of my room in the BRIO, whereas the StreamCam is much more punchy and contrasty, which honestly I like, but not everybody will necessarily want that. And skin tone rendition just on auto here. I have a very nice expensive Aperture Tri-8 light softly diffused on my face. It's at 5600 Kelvin. The skin tone rendition in both of these cameras are a little weird. I'm a Cheeto in the BRIO. I'm kind of like weirdly pinkish in the StreamCam. And in the AverMedia Cam, I'm looking pretty good. And then my Sony a7S is actually manually tuned here. This is with only clean white light on my face. There was no real difference. I'm still pink and orange. So with all of this, they also include a 3-month XSplit premium license. I'm guessing they've had this deal going for a very long time because it started at least with the Logitech C920, and it's just a little awkward since they now own Streamlabs OBS, and they seem to be doing nothing special with Streamlabs OBS, which counters the fears that I had that I expressed when I covered the news of it, but doesn't address why they're supporting another program so thoroughly. I don't know. It's weird. So they've done a couple other things to try to improve this camera over previous iterations as well. That includes their new microphone system, which I will have a test of later in the video. They have a new improved microphone system that may or may not sound better. They do have a couple different modes for it though. They have a stereo mode, which actually has stereo sound, but that might be off-putting when you're just a single person or you have a group of people and you're getting like voices in different ears. That could be off-putting for people. So they actually have it in dual mono mode, which means it just uses one of the microphones to pick you up, but plays it to both ears, which would be much more preferable. And thankfully that is the default. So kudos on them for that.
So editor Epo here. I was going to include microphone samples, and this is what it sounds like coming straight out of Logitech Capture. And this is, you know, with none of them reporting clipping in Windows settings.
And here's a test using the StreamCam's microphone in dual mono mode. This is a microphone test, just so you can get a test of what it sounds like, testing. And we're gonna check out the BRIO and the C920's audio as well.
That's the StreamCam. This is the BRIO if I turn off the extra channels.
So this is a test recording using the Logitech BRIO's microphone for comparison. Test, 1, 2, 3. And this is a test using the Logitech C920's microphone as a comparison as well. Test, 1, 2, 3, test, 1, 2, 3, in case that matters to you.
I'm not gonna actually include all of these tests. Audio's bad.
And then they claim they have AI assisted autofocus for this camera, especially in Logitech Capture. And I will say, it's doing a fairly decent job in auto here of managing the exposure and the focus automatically. You will see me getting overexposed a little bit, but if I make that like the biggest point in the frame, then it starts to turn down the exposure. So it's always a little awkward to juggle, but most of the other cameras are keeping up as well. Obviously the Sony camera is just in manual mode anyway, but the autofocus is an issue for me because there's only so much help that AI assistants can do. Because you see, I'm gonna go ahead and open up the manual settings for the StreamCam here. And I'm going to turn it into manual focus, and you're immediately going to see the problem. Camera control, focus, turn off autofocus. All right, so this is all the way on one end, and this is all the way on the other end. Now this is as close to the camera as it gets. So by default, autofocus put it around 30 to get to me, which is basically at the end of the spectrum. And I'm going to go ahead and kick it back to autofocus here. The issue being that these webcams have a focus range, a manual or autofocus range of 10 centimeters from the sensor So about to here, kind of the back of my head, and then the rest is infinity focus. And so unless you are literally right on top of the camera, it is pretty much impossible to really utilize autofocus in an effective way. And you may notice for a lot of this video, it's probably focused on my background or my chair mesh or something else other than my face, because it's really hard to get like exactly right here when your range is basically from the camera to my head and the rest is infinity focus. They don't have a long focus throw here. And so, whereas with my Sony cam, I can get autofocus like at any distance, and as long as I'm facing it, it will keep up. The Logitech webcams, you have to be basically on top of it for the autofocus to even matter, and otherwise you just have basically everything sort of kind of in focus. And AI Assist can't help with that, because that's literally the range that the camera can focus at. And that's a really frustrating part about webcams that gets annoying to deal with. And you don't really need autofocus for webcams unless you're trying to do something where you're like, hey, look at this thing. And yeah, that autofocused really quickly, but so did the other webcams. But you know, if you want to shove something right up on the camera to get focused on, you can generally do a good job. Pretty cool. But otherwise, like I said, you're not getting autofocus. And given that it has a tighter field of view than the other cameras, you'll notice here in this comparison, compared to the camera in the top right, that one is super wide, whereas the BRIO is a little bit cropped, tighter, and then the StreamCam is tighter than that. The StreamCam is limited to a 78-degree field of view, whereas the BRIO had 3 different field of view modes, including a 90-degree one. And a lot of streamers seem to prefer these wider field of views, and I don't know why, because you're just seeing more of my messy room. Like, honestly, I think the 78-degree field of view is perfectly fine overall. But if you want to utilize that autofocus and try to maybe get ever so slight depth of field, then you want to be able to get right up on top of the camera, and you can't do that unless you have a wide enough field of view to have everything in frame. So there is a push-pull kind of thing going here. As far as like image quality and sharpness goes here, Auto is actually doing a decent job. It's a little bit sharper than the C920 or the C922. You're looking at it compared to the BRIO, and for the most part, the sharpness is exactly the same. I don't think there's a big difference. There's a little bit of tweaking here as far as the color goes, but we can adjust that. So I'm going to go ahead and run through the entirety of setting up manual settings for you real quick. So here's what they all look like with some manual settings applied. I could not get the white balance to perfectly match between the BRIO and the StreamCam, and on the unnamed camera, I just had to leave it on manual or auto white balance. And honestly, the auto one looks great, but I could not get it quite right with the manual. But honestly, the auto has always been pretty rock solid and stable. And overall, this unnamed camera, which again, I'll hopefully be covering soon, has been a lot more stable and steady compared to either Logitech camera in the end. But you can see here, I've mostly tried to match things up as best I could with the 2 cameras. And an issue that I struggle with is maybe these are different sensors, because it feels like the BRIO just has a little bit more dynamic range than the StreamCam, as you get to see a little bit more of the brightness and the darkness all in the frame. And there's a much finer balance from what I can see in the StreamCam in terms of getting me bright enough but not getting these hot spots where I get overblown, whereas the BRIO doesn't seem to struggle with it that much. It just has some weird color casts sometimes. This is what they look like overall, glitches aside. Seems to be fine. All right, here I have added the Logitech C920 running in 1080p 30 mode to this scene as well, so you can get a sense of if your camera is a suitable upgrade. This is awkward to have so many cameras on one angle. As a suitable upgrade to the StreamCam, and you will see the white balance is instantly way better. This is on auto. If I put it on manual, I could maybe ruin it, but like on auto, it looks way better than either the BRIO, although the BRIO is a lot closer, or the StreamCam. That's annoying. And quality-wise, it looks okay. The problem with all of these cameras is these manual settings that I've applied. As soon as I unplug them or restart my computer, all of those go away. Now you can sort of recover these by using Logitech G Hub or Logitech Capture, but Logitech Capture doesn't even give you those settings, and not everybody has had the best results. So this is what the C920 looks like if you're looking for a point of upgrade comparison. This is in MJPEG mode at 1080p 30. By the way, if you are using MJPEG with a webcam or a capture card, in 9 times out of 10, you need to set that device in OBS to full color range instead of partial. You still want OBS set to partial, but the capture device properties in OBS need set to full. Weird little quirk, but otherwise you're going to get washed out colors or something else. But this is the C920. And honestly, looking at it, it holds up a lot better than the StreamCam. It's kind of ridiculous. I'm actually going to drop the StreamCam to 1080p 30 and see how it compares real quick here, just because I think it's so baffling how different it looks. And we are able to set it to YUI2 in 1080p 30. So we're going to let that kick in. There we go. There we go. Now we are in YUI2 1080p 30 partial. It mostly looks the same. I think the C920 holds up a lot better. It's kind of embarrassing. So this is the Logitech StreamCam in Logitech's Capture app, which is their new Capture app, relatively new, that has been out for a little while now. It's meant to replace the Logitech webcam software that they got rid of after Windows 7. So it has a light mode and a dark mode. For whatever reason, it thinks my camera's in portrait mode. It has an internal sensor to detect when you put it in portrait mode. Hello. So if you want to stream this way, you have the option, and then you flip it over and you're in landscape mode, but sometimes it doesn't work right. Man, that field of view feels so much tighter compared to the portrait mode. So you have some options here. You have two different sources or two different scenes you can edit to record in or theoretically live stream in, and you have a few different picture-in-picture options. So we're in our first scene. You can set up for it to show multiple sources. So this is one. Well, this is the two different scenes. You can also do picture-in-picture of the two different scenes. So we're actually going to come into scene 2 and set up the BRIO. There we go. And here you can see the BRIO. Wow, that's really blurry. There we go. You can see the BRIO's different field of views. You have 65, 78, which is the default, same as the StreamCam, and then 90. StreamCam doesn't have this option. So we can come back here to StreamCam and we can do like picture-in-picture with the BRIO. We can do picture-by-picture with portrait mode. It's a little awkward. We have a couple different options. Now, you have different presets you can choose from, whether you're streaming. You can set it up for streaming or recording, which seems to change things. Okay, for me, it just changed it. Streaming prioritizes frame rate. Recording prioritizes exposure. I'm not sure that's the best choice. Or you can do custom, and then you can change it yourself. So you can prioritize whether it maintains the brightest, best, quote-unquote, possible exposure, or the smoothest frame rate, which may darken it up at times. You also have backlight correction, which is like low light compensation. I'm going to turn that off. There we go. The image is instantly better. And then you have that audio option between dual audio or dual mono and stereo. Again, you're going to want the dual mono in most cases. The stereo audio is going to be a little confusing because it's going to have, you know, you going between different ears. You can turn on auto framing, which allows it to track your face and automatically adjust the frame for it, which can do some cool stuff, but it's all digital zoom, so you're losing resolution and detail, and you don't have a lot to work with. And so that's the thing. You also have image stabilization, which will also crop in a little bit. But then if you start shaking the camera, it's supposed to help, but you can see you just get the wobbly, goopy mess. You don't want that either. You got controls for autofocus and auto white balance, or changing them to manual, which is fine. And then you have image settings. Now, these image settings look nothing like the image settings available in OBS when you go to configure video, which are the default UVC video settings, which apply to all webcams, which control things like exposure and gamma and gain and things like that. This is just brightness, sharpness, contrast, and saturation, basically. I may have gotten those exactly wrong, but you can play with them and see. So I can increase the brightness here, but that's a post-process brightness. That has nothing to do with the exposure levels here. You can see here, even if I crank it down, my forehead's still overexposed there, and that just looks ridiculous. Reset. Yes. Yeah, so this one's sharpness, which again is post-process, so we can just like blur it out if we want, or we can get over sharp, whatever. This will be contrast, and then this will be saturation, which will boost your colors. Then you have auto flicker, which affects lights in the background depending on where you are. You can set up green screen chroma keying, and then you have advanced settings, which is automatically flipping your or horizontally and vertically flipping your source, which they were very proud to brag about, even though this is the most basic camera feature you can add into a camera. Then you have your recording, pause, and screenshot controls over here. Access your recording folder, mute, and adjust your system sound and microphone sound. It's meant to be kind of like a mini, all-encompassing streaming program. The problem here is, like I said, these are all post-process image settings. So my face is currently overexposed per the auto settings, and I have no way to adjust that in this software whatsoever. The controls are not there. So for the situation they showed in their trailer, wherein you have someone with a bunch of ring lights, they had like two or three different ring lights blasting their face with light, and they want clean, even lighting using this camera in the Logitech Capture app. You have no way to make that work because their face will be overexposed, and you don't get control over that. You only get that if you access the UVC settings, which are pretty much only available in OBS or other streaming apps. XSplit has some nice integrations as well. A little annoying, IMO, but then we can take a picture. Or we can take some video, which may or may not work since I'm also recording in OBS. And it works fine. You may get an error saying no encoder available. If so, you need to go to your advanced settings. So come down here to this camera icon, and that changes what resolution you're recording at. So you can record at 4K if you have a 4K capable camera, or full HD for this one. This is for landscape mode. You can adjust portrait mode, or you can even record in square format for social media. However, it does not automatically crop your scene. So instead of having just me crop to a square, which would be the logical, sensible way to go, you've got me letterboxed in a square. That's not what people want. Then you can choose your frame rate, which again will be based on the frame rate capabilities of the webcam you have selected. We have the StreamCam here, so 60 is fine. Then you have video encoders. For me, that's just NVIDIA NVENC. You may have Intel QuickSync, AMD VCE, or it may give you a software H.264 option. I'm not sure why it's not giving me that one, but basically it wants to use your graphics card's encoder. I have a lot of videos talking about GPU encoders if you don't know what those are. You can change your record locations. You can adjust whether there's a countdown, a framing grid. You want to do the rule of thirds, and 5 megapixel enhanced screenshots, which just kind of help upscale your photos, which is fine. Here, I did one picture, I'll do another. We'll see if there's any quality difference that you can tell in this 4K video. So you got settings for that there. Then you have audio settings to adjust your microphone. So we have my chat mic here. That's fine. Then you have hotkeys you can set up. Pretty nice. You've got profiles so you can keep your settings synced across computers, which is pretty cool. This was not there last time I looked at sound capture. And then this is, you can turn off the Logi watermark that's there by default. Obviously, you can add text overlays. Pretty cool. You can add scene effects like filters. Yeah, you want that. Or borders, which has probably been there the whole time, because I don't think there's a way to disable it. And transitions when cutting between the scenes, which is kind of cool, I guess. So that's what's available to you, but again, it's pretty limited. And actually, you can see here, it's not happy that I'm recording with NVENC in OBS and this at the same time. So this is a sample recorded with Logitech Capture. I may have to sync it up in post. We'll see. Using my main microphone. In my previous look at Logitech Capture, one of the big fundamental issues that was with it was the audio quality was abysmal. It was recording to a really low audio bit rate. You had no control over it, and it sounded like total butt. So here's a test to see if it sounds any different. So one thing I didn't touch on with Logitech Capture's settings is that you can actually translate all of this into OBS, because an issue is something like this auto framing functionality, which is not actually doing anything all of a sudden. That's weird. Hello? Oh, I have to be clicked into it. That's annoying. Something like the auto framing or any of the filters or effects you apply in Logitech software, even though it doesn't have the manual settings that you actually want, so your mileage may vary. Any of this doesn't actually apply to when you add the video capture device directly in OBS. Instead, you need to work with the virtual device. So Logitech Capture actually gives you a virtual video capture device. So if I go to video capture device and want to add the webcam, instead of adding the Logitech StreamCam, I add Logitech Capture as an option. There we go. We get the webcam pass through mostly in real time. Like if I make this full screen over here and then I pull up Logitech Capture in the left side. Oh, it's not gonna let me do that, but you can see here, there's pretty minimal latency between it showing up in Logitech Capture and being routed to OBS, which is pretty cool. And all of the auto framing and stuff is passed through to OBS. So that is a really cool capability of the software. They just need to implement those manual settings in order for it to actually be useful for most streamers. But that's really cool functionality that I wanted to highlight even more. Overall, would I recommend the Logitech StreamCam for you? I don't know. For $169, you are bordering on the territory of being able to buy a real camera and potentially getting a better result. I think the lack of included detachable USB cable option is absurd. You're going to run into some frustrations with that, and extending it is only going to cause you more problems. I think that it's a worse camera and a worse value compared to the Logitech BRIO, both in terms of flexibility and in terms of specs and the detachable cable and the maneuverability, all sorts of things. If you are someone who uses a ring light and streams in vertical mode from a PC and wants a camera that supports that more cleanly, I guess. I don't know who you are. I would love to hear who you are. Please contact me. Let's chat. I want to learn. But I expected more from a camera that seems to be labeled the ultimate experience for streamers. I expected a little bit more of usefulness for streamers. And what Logitech seems to do is they seem to put out new cameras, but ultimately their software falls flat and they're not actually doing any innovations that benefit streamers in any way, because they've done this a couple times. Like the C922 was just a slightly tweaked C920 in ways that does not benefit anyone, and then they labeled it as a streaming pro webcam, and it's nothing different. And for those of you wondering, the Best Buy edition that says the StreamCam Plus, it's the same thing as the StreamCam. They are the same camera. I think it's kind of ridiculous that the pretty much only company making major webcams right now, and maybe that's why, because they're not facing competition or anything like that, but the only company making consumer webcams refuses to innovate. We had this whole thing with, you know, Intel versus AMD, and Intel leading the pack and refusing to innovate and, you know, holding the market hostage. I feel like Logitech's doing the same. This is not a step up in virtually any direction, other than like minute details most people don't want. Like I've received so many comments wondering why they even include microphones on webcams at all, because most people are using extra webcams, external webcams, and I just they're not pushing the envelope. They're not doing us any favors. They're just releasing weird products and charging more for it, and then not sending review samples, saying it's for streamers, having reviews on day one that don't talk about streaming, and not actually doing anything specific to streaming. I'm trying to be, you know, unbiased and positive. If you're looking for a webcam that's a step up from the C920, this or the BRIO are both great options. You can pick based on your results here. For $200, you could get a used Canon Vixia HFR500 camcorder, which will be a lot more stable. Plug that up to a Elgato Cam Link or whatever cheapest, honestly, capture card you can get, and you're good to go. So and then you have an expandable system that will let you upgrade cameras to something like an A5100 down the road, or a Panasonic G7, or a Canon M500, even though those are like $500, so maybe not. There's a lot of options here, and I'll be covering what the webcam alternative options are in a future video as well. I've been planning this for a while. I'm super stoked for it, but I cannot in good faith recommend that you buy this at full MSRP price when that's basically the BRIO has been cheaper at many points in time, and again, it's mostly a better camera. I don't know. I'm weirded out by webcams at the moment. I try not to be too negative about them, but I gotta provide you with the answers you're looking for, and here you go. Hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching this episode of Stream Guides. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe for more tech education and streaming tutorials. Check out my webcam reviews playlist for reviews of basically every other webcam on the market. I'm trying to update them a little bit, trying to rehash some things, and I do have a couple other webcams that I do need to review as well as some knockoffs, just to talk about that ridiculous market. I'm EposVox, your stream professor. I'll see you next time.